This is the Fredericksburg Neighbors Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Dory Stewart.
Welcome back to another episode of the FXBG Neighbors Podcast, where we share the stories of our favorite local brands. We've got something a little bit different today. We have a special guest joining us. We have local author Joyce Miller. Joyce, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me.
I'm really excited about this and excited to dive in. And you have written a book recently that is so exciting because it's so local for the Fredericksburg area. So let's start there. Share with us all about your new book.
Okay, so my new book is titled Mrs. Gary Melchers, and it's a historical fiction novel, but it's based on the true story of Corinne Mackle Melchers, who, is a local heroine, I would say. She was an artist herself, and she married Gary Melchers, a man much older than her. And due to the time that she lived in, she couldn't pursue her art in the way she wanted to, and she ended up promoting his art career and being pivotal in, making him a success.
I love it, and it's such a great story. And isn't it so interesting how I feel like a lot of women can relate to her story, right?
I think so. I could certainly relate to her story. I felt like we were kindred spirits. So I live in Richmond, and but I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so I used to drive between Richmond and Pittsburgh back and forth on Interstate 95, which I'm sure many of your viewers have driven there. And I would see that brown attraction sign that said Gary Melchers Home and Studio. And I didn't know who Gary Melchers was. And I thought, that is he like a Civil War hero? I just had no idea. And so one day I stopped and I went through Belmont, which, is across the river from Fredericksburg. And I went all through their home and their studio with all of his paintings. But in the house, there are 6 paintings that Corinne painted. And so I went to the gift shop and I asked if there was a book about her, and they said, no, there's no book. And so I just felt like I have to tell her story.
I love that. And so tell me about your background. Did you have a background in writing or art? And like, how did you go from, touring to I'm going to write her story?
So I always wanted to write from the time I was a young child. But life takes us in different directions. And for 30 years, I was a mechanical designer at a nuclear physics laboratory.
Wow.
in Newport News, Jefferson Lab. And so when I retired in 2019, I thought I'm going to give this writing a shot because now I have time and I can do it. And so I wrote a historical fiction novel based on the true story of my granduncle, Joe Harris, who played baseball in the 1910s, 1920s. And his baseball career was interrupted by World War I. He was severely injured, and then he came back and played in the World Series in 1927. So it was like a story that wrote itself. And I self-published it. And so then I was kind of in this writing mindset. And so that's when I went through the house at Belmont and thought, oh, I need to tell her story. And it was this the same time frame, the 1910s, 1920s, 1930s.
Yeah.
And so I guess I had a lot of the research, and so it just kind of landed in my lap.
Yeah, I can see that. You're kind of already immersed in that time period, and then, there's the connection with her story, and who better to tell it? I love it.
Yes.
I love it. So has Gary Melcher's studio, have they picked up the book? Have they seen it? Are you in the gift shop?
So not yet, but we're in discussions about that right now. The curator is reading the book, and we'll see if it gets. It's not a biography; it's fiction.
Right.
So as I did follow a lot of her life story and that kind of thing, but I did embellish it, and
Yeah.
so I don't know if they'll put it in the gift shop or not, but I'm hoping so.
Yeah, I mean that would be really cool, and I feel like a lot of a lot of history pieces you kind of have to fill in the gaps, right? Because
Right.
you have limited information. So I'm really looking forward to reading it. And I have a question for you. So if there's someone listening who's inspired by your story and kind of, you know, you're very interesting because you came from a field completely different than writing, and so I feel like this is very inspirational. So if someone is listening and they're
Uh-huh.
thinking, I've always wanted to write, what is some advice you would give them?
So yeah, and I think a lot of people want to write a book, and of course
Hmm.
it takes some dedication and some patience and those kinds of things. But one of
Hmm.
the things, so I worked in a scientific field, very male dominated, um, and so that I could really relate to her and her story, because even though it was the art world, which is creative, it still was dominated by men when she was involved in it. And so I would just say to take things that you are interested in, or and write about the things that you're interested in, or find someone who maybe inspires you to
Hmm.
write their story.
Yeah, yeah, that's really great advice.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So I want to learn more about you. When you're not busy writing, what are you doing for fun?
So I have a greyhound,
Ah,
and so I've been involved in the greyhound adoption community for many years.
mm,
My greyhound that I have now is my sixth greyhound.
wow.
So I do a lot of advocacy for them, and I used to do a lot more hands-on working with getting the dogs from the racetrack into people's homes. Of course, now they've eliminated many of the racetracks, and so the need is not so great as it was when I
Hmm.
started back in the beginning of the 90s, which is
Hmm.
in some respects a good thing.
Yeah.
And so I like walking my greyhound. I do that, several times a day, and I
Hmm.
also like to paint, and
Ah,
so same as Corinne, and go to museums and
hmm.
uh, that kind of thing.
Amazing. Has your uh, interest or inspiration changed any after kind of doing the research about Corinne in your own painting?
Um, oh, that's a good question. So maybe so, maybe a little bit. So
Mhm.
she painted a lot of still lifes, but and she painted a lot of different things, still lifes, landscapes. There's a very good portrait she did of of her husband that's very technical. There's like a mirror in the background. So yeah, perhaps I've expanded my repertoire of what I want to paint.
I could see that. So here's a question. What is next for you?
So next, I'm writing another historical fiction novel, again, based on a woman who, a similar time frame. So my husband and I also are foodies, and we like to go places to eat, destination eating. So for our wedding anniversary several years ago, we went to Chicago, and we went to the Chicago Art Museum. And in the basement of the Chicago Art Museum, there are 68 little miniature rooms.
Wow.
They're all 1/12 scale, and some are famous rooms and some are rooms of the artists. She knew the people that and she made a little model of their room. And the person who did them was a woman, Narcissa Thorne, who married the heir to the Montgomery Ward store. He was the he got all the money from the Montgomery Ward fortune. So she was his wife, but again, was not really allowed to do, like, she could have become an architect, right? But she couldn't because of her being a woman at that time. And so she made all these little rooms. And of course, again, I went looking for a book about her and couldn't find one. And so I've been researching that. And an interesting thing came from that research was I found on the same street that she lived on in Chicago was another woman who also made miniature rooms. And those rooms were called the Nutshells of Death. And that woman's little rooms, each one had a different murder scene in it, because she wanted to become a forensic scientist. But at the time was not allowed to go to school for that. And so she made these, and the FBI used those rooms up until the 50s in their training to for the cadets to pick up different things about the, like if a person died from a suicide or they were murdered or whatever. And these two women lived on the same street and were 2 years apart in age. So I just found it really interesting. So
That's very interesting.
that's my next book. A little sciencey, a little artsy, a little.
Yeah, I feel like a series coming here, right? Like the unsung women heroes who, just need their voices heard, and you are the vehicle to get us there.
Yeah, and they just had to go with what they could go with, I guess,
Yeah, yeah.
So
I love it. Well, I love what you're doing, and I can't wait to read your newest book. And if the listeners also want to read your book or connect with you, how can they reach you?
So I do have a website. It's www.joyceamiller.com. And there's access to all my books. They also could sign up for my email if they want to, and keep up with what we're doing and how the books are coming along. And I'm on Instagram at Joyce A. Miller Writer if they want to follow me there.
Amazing. Joyce, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today and sharing your books with us.
Well, thank you for having me. And I love Fredericksburg. It's a great place for Richmonders to, an hour away by car. They can also take the train, and it's just got restaurants and art museums and little treasures.
Yes, little treasures. I like that. Yes, definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. This has been fun.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Fredericksburg Neighbors Podcast. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to fxbgneighborspodcast.com.